Welcome in. Latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. Go by SEC Mike on the Twitters. And there he is, our great friend, Stephen Lassan, the senior editor over at Athlon Sports. Stephen, how are you, my friend?
Mike, I am surviving. What a crazy weekend it was between the games. We actually had some of those, right? We had some coaching craziness. Man, what a world of college football it has been the last couple of days. Hope all the cousins, Mike, hope you and cousin Shane also had a wonderful Thanksgiving, got to spend some time with your family, and also got to check out all the great football that we had. So, man, I don't even know where to start tonight. It's like crazy. Like our mind's like going 100 places here.
Yes, so Stephen and I were just joking off air that feels like it was about 2 weeks ago that Texas and Texas A&M met on a football field. So we're going to do some recaps. We're going to do a look ahead to the SEC championship game. We got coaching carousel still spinning out of control. We've got updated SEC playoff and bowl projections from Stephen, so a lot to cover. Real quick, Stephen, don't forget, as always, we're brought to you by MyBookie, the online sports book. If you haven't already, go check them out. Helps the show out. Promo code SEC. They got all kinds of deals. I know it's past Thanksgiving, but holiday season, Christmas, New Year's, all the games, all the action, got you covered over at MyBookie. So go check them out. And don't forget, Tennessee Legend. Steven's been drunk off his Tennessee Legend, watching all these damn games, trying to keep up with all this coaching search. So we appreciate you. Tennessee Legend. Support the show. Get you some Tennessee Legend. Well, we just had some breaking news here, Stephen. Wanted to get your thoughts. We were going to do a Stephen hot board, and this guy was on the hot board, so credit to you, Stephen. But shout out Ross Dellinger. He's one of the best out there, Yahoo Sports. This is a verbatim tweet here. Kentucky is working toward a deal to make Oregon offensive coordinator Will Stein its next head coach. The sides are expected to finalize the agreement soon. So very quickly, this is coming together. Stephen, what are your thoughts on Oregon offensive coordinator Will Stein and possibly being the next Kentucky head coach?
Mike, I love this hire for Kentucky. You know, we were kind of joking, it's been so much bad news for Kentucky during the season. What are they going to do with Mark Stoops? Well, kind of after a prolonged process, they fire him and they get the ending correct. Will Stein is one of the best offensive coordinators in college football, one of the best developers of quarterbacks, offensive talent. We saw it he did a nice job at UTSA before he went to Oregon. He is very young, only 36 years old. And of course, he played his ball at Louisville, a little bit of a rivalry. But Mike, I think just his background on offense, and I think this is it's exciting, isn't it? If you Kentucky, I know you want to play good defense, but to have somebody who can put some points on the board, develop quarterbacks, run some exciting stuff offensively. This is what Kentucky's missing. It's kind of a jolt of energy in the program, I think. So you can probably criticize the lack of head coaching experience, but Mike, I love the background on offense and of course his ties to this day. I think this is a big time hire for Kentucky.
And pardon my ignorance here, Stephen, but how long has Will Stein been the offensive coordinator up there at Oregon?
Since 2023. And
okay.
Mike, they've pretty much every year they've had one of the nation's best offenses there.
Right. And that's with different quarterbacks.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty promising. And I'm not always a big believer, Stephen, in, you have to go opposite of this defensive minded. So we got to go offensive. Oh, our offensive coach was horrible. We got to go defensive. I don't necessarily think you have to do that, but I understand why you would want to do that. And I have to imagine that Will Stein, being as young as he is, seeing how the NIL and the transfer portal, how effective Oregon is at utilizing that, I realize he's not going to probably, or not even probably, but he won't have the resources at Kentucky that match Oregon because few, if any, do. But just the fact that how they utilize it, I think that will serve them well if Kentucky gets on board, particularly AD Mitch Barnhart with giving this man the ammunition to go out there and get some players.
Mike, I think that's kind of a critical thing in this hiring process for Kentucky is what kind of resources, and I think this is something if I was Will Stein and his representation, I would want to know what kind of resources are you going to have to be able to go out and get transfers and for the NIL stuff? Because I think we've seen that, whether it's Kiffin or some of these others, there is that how much are you going to have to go towards the cap, and also what can you do beyond that? And if you're just going to run back the same old playbook, if you're Kentucky, it's probably not going to be good enough. I think you're going to have to raise the bar here. But Mike, I think one thing to keep in mind here, you mentioned it with different quarterbacks. Those quarterbacks that he worked with at Oregon, Bo Nix, he's a pretty good quarterback in the NFL. Dylan Gabriel started some games for the Browns this year. Dante Moore is the quarterback this year. I'd be willing to bet that he's going to be a high pick in this year's draft or maybe next year's. I bring that up because, we're talking about NIL and dollars and all that stuff. If I'm a quarterback and I see that guy's coached 3 quarterbacks in the NFL, and maybe this is Cutter Boley, maybe it's somebody different, but I'm thinking about, man, we got a really good potential here with a coach who knows what to do offensively. He's put guys in the NFL and they've started. That's a selling point for Kentucky, going forward on the recruiting trail. And it is different, from Stoops. Stoops kind of much more defensive minded. The other side of the ball, like if you're Stein, you've got the offense. How do you figure out that defensive component? So there are some things that are unknown here. But Mike, I think if you got the NIL dollars right, you got a coach who's going to put some points on the board. And I think that's pretty exciting if you're Kentucky.
Yeah, and maybe you're just tuning in, you missed it, but breaking news that looks like Kentucky is going to get Oregon offensive coordinator Will Stein to be its next head coach. This is not yet official, but is expected soon, according to Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports. But it also tells me another thing, Stephen, where, Stoops was the last coach fired here in the SEC. They kind of waited. They kicked the can down the road and, it looked like he had maybe saved his job. And I said, oh, wait a second. If they have 2 blowouts, which I certainly thought was possible, given that I think Kentucky's the worst team in the conference, and that's exactly what happened. So they waited and waited and waited. And some people said they waited too long. The fact that Kentucky, again, it's not final yet, but we are less than 24 hours from when they made the decision to fire Mark Stoops. They've already essentially got their next guy. I think that is a strong sign, Stephen, that Kentucky is kind of, they've got all their ducks in a row, so to speak. They know what they're doing. This is not like willy-nilly and hell, I have seen Tennessee search 21 plus days to get a head coach. You know what I mean? And we may go 24 hours getting a coach. I think if they get Will Stein, I think this tells you clearly this is probably why they fired Mark Stoops. Get this guy, get him in there, and I want to shout out this guy because I heard him say it, so I don't want people to think I stole his logic. But our friend Adam Luckett from Kentucky Sports Radio, he made a really good point with these coaches to where a couple years ago, Stephen, Kentucky could have got Jon Sumrall. And that was the choice. Had Stoops left for Texas A&M. Now you sit on your hands, you wait a couple years, all of a sudden Jon Sumrall is Florida's coach. So point being, Kentucky kind of has to go a little early on some of these guys. Will Stein, if they don't get him now, maybe in a year or two, who knows? Maybe he's Ole Miss coach or Auburn coach, or I'm just inserting teams here, but basically programs where you see as an elite job, that is the trajectory that Stein is perhaps on. So Kentucky's got to go a little early. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's funny you say that because when the job opened up, you kind of wondered about the process because, like you said, it was a lot of maybe, is he going to be back? Is he not? I think those 2 blowouts certainly played a part in it. But I looked at the candidate list last night and thought, man, if they could get Will Stein, if they could get Brian Hartline, if they could get a Bob Chesney, they're actually going to end up in a good spot. So while the process to get rid of him was a little screwed up, they actually ended up in a good place. And maybe to some extent, maybe there was some back channeling before the firing to say, hey, do you want this job? If you do, we're willing to make the move. And if you didn't, maybe you'd go to some Stoops again or someone else. But Mike, I do think you're right about kind of almost taking upside, because I think about that a little bit with, like, whether it's college football or it's other sports, like you're trying to find an edge. And if you're trying to find an edge, maybe you have to go a little bit early on somebody. You're kind of almost paying for future performance, because if he ends up having a good year at Oregon next season, he might end up being Florida State's coach. And so I think you don't want to miss a chance of somebody who's got connections to your state, and also not to mention his offensive track record to me is very impressive. And so if they have another good year next year, he's probably aiming higher than Kentucky. So you'll be willing to live with the mistakes, almost like for the upside that this could bring for the next couple of years.
Yeah, and shout out to Brian. He's got a question for us here, Stephen. Brian Hartline, the Ohio State, I believe he's the offensive coordinator now. He's a longtime receivers coach. Why wasn't he the choice at Arkansas, Kentucky, or even Auburn? Seems to me he should be at or near the top of the list. And credit Stephen, he did have Hartline on the hot board here, but thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that he hasn't ended up anywhere in this coaching carousel. A couple reasons. One, there could be a little bit of doubt. I know he is the play caller at Ohio State. Is there a little bit of doubt from schools, whether it's still Ryan Day's offense? And, kind of the same thing that I think assistants under Kirby Smart have had to fight as defensive assistants. How much of it is him? How much of it is someone else? I also think his name was mentioned with Penn State, and Penn State search is still going on. So there might be a connection there. Given his connections to the Midwest and Ohio and Big Ten country, I think he's probably a little bit better fit at some of those jobs. Of course, his brother was the quarterback for Kentucky. I think that was an easy connection to make on the hot board. So I agree. Personally, I agree with you. Like, I think he'd have been good at Arkansas, but I think he's probably more likely to take a job somewhere maybe in Big Ten country.
Mm-hmm. And now Chris Lowe and Pete Nankos over at On3. The hiring, I don't know that it's official, but they're saying Breaking Kentucky is hiring Will Stein. So just further confirmation of what we've been speaking of here. Thank you, Lance Miller. Will Stein to Kentucky. So pretty good hire there, I would think. But we've got a lot of hires to break down, Stephen. We're already kind of there. Should we just probably just stick with that? What do you think about Lane Kiffin making his way down to LSU, trying to blow up Ole Miss and their playoff chances on his way out the door? I mean, Lane it's not possible for him to have a clean exit, is it?
Right. I was going to say, everywhere he's been has been, other than like Florida Atlantic, it's been a pretty chaotic departure, right? He just can't have a normal exit from the NFL, assistant, a head coaching ranks. Mike, I think for all the drama and for all the craziness about the exit, I think one thing is for certain. Lane Kiffin's going to win a lot of games at LSU. And given his track record, given LSU's track record, what they can do financially, what they can do for the roster, in-state recruiting, the expectation's national championship. And so I think that's kind of the interesting spot for Kiffin is, he's been thriving at Ole Miss. And I think the expectation was 10, 11 wins, like get to the college football playoff. Now it's a little bit higher at LSU. How do you become the coach that's good enough to get to the playoff? How do you win a national championship? And so just getting to 9-10 wins was not good enough for Brian Kelly. Obviously, there were some other things in there, but that's the expectation for Lane, is that he's going to have to deliver deep playoff runs and national championships.
UT Rage says, hoes make money, Stephen, and maybe that fits the bill here because
only the SEC.
And hey, did you see this? So apparently, I don't understand. This makes no sense to me, but apparently LSU will be paying Lane Kiffin bonuses should Ole Miss hit achievements that he was supposed to get at Ole Miss, if that makes sense. So all these coaches got bonuses, right? Make the national championship, it's an insane amount of money. Win the national championship, it's obviously even more. If Ole Miss were to do that, LSU is going to fulfill those bonuses, which again, that's kind of asinine.
Mike, I thought there was a whole episode after the firing of Brian Kelly about fiscal responsibility. Right? I mean, come on, man. The buyouts, the contract, it's just as bad as all these other ones we've seen. And now we get this bonus structure for the college football playoff. Mike, ADs are really bad negotiators. Lane Kiffin got a great contract there, right?
Certainly, yeah. And it's not about the money, Stephen. He didn't even ask about the money. He said that in his press conference. Don't even bring the numbers to my attention. He's probably going to work for free, given what a classy individual he is. But no, you're right. He's going to win. Let me ask you this, because this is all they care about, which is fine. But will he win a national championship, do you think, at LSU?
Mike, first of all, I would say if he doesn't really care about the dollars, shouldn't that mesh well with Governor Landry's request to have so he should just come in, work for, 1 million, couple bonuses? I don't know. I mean,
you would think.
I'm confused about this whole thing because after watching that whole thing, I thought maybe we'd see a little bit different, but of course, here we are, same contract structure. Mike, I think Lane Kiffin's probably going to win at a high level. National championship, I would say probably the odds probably favor him getting there, just because he is one of those coaches that, number one, I trust that he's going to build a high-powered offense, and maybe we'll see what he gets in the portal this year, perhaps even from his old team. I suspect LSU is going to be a lot better offensively next year after what we've watched this season. So he's got the offense down. He's proven he can win the SEC. He's going to be operating from I think a better baseline too, with high school talent. State of Louisiana, just an unbelievable place to go get high school players. Then you add the portal, you add all of, you're at one of the most prestigious jobs in the country. Everything says that he should win at a high level. It's not easy to. It's not going to be easy to get past Ohio State and Georgia, but I think the odds probably favor him getting LSU to a national championship appearance.
Mm-hmm. But do they win? Do you think they win it?
I'll go with one. Yeah. Do you think that's too bold?
No, I don't think that's bold at all. But I think the wild card here would be how long he lasts with. I mean, anything could happen. If it's Lane Kiffin, you can't rule it out. Scandal, another job. The governor could go off. You know what I mean? There's so many different things could go wrong for Lane Kiffin. But yeah, I think that's why he's down there. That's why Brian Kelly was down there too. I thought Brian Kelly was going to win one. He never got close. So I certainly think Lane Kiffin is a lot better coach. I don't think I've ever deviated from that. But yeah, I mean, if he doesn't get it done, he's Lane Kiffin for life. You know what?
Mike, I know I've said this before in your show, but if Les Miles and Ed Orgeron can win national championships, and I know the landscape is a lot different now with the transfer portal, Lane is very good at navigating that. You have the expanded playoff. It's a little bit harder. It's not 1, 2, and 4. It's 12, maybe even 16. So you got to win more games. If they can win a national title, given that Kiffin is a better coach, it would be a massive disappointment if they don't at least make it to the national championship game in the next couple of years. Not saying next year, but I mean, given that they're winning double-digit games at Ole Miss, I mean, the expectation in 27 is probably going to be, hey, we got to be 10 wins, 11 wins. The 9-game SEC slate's going to make those win totals a little harder, but I think the expectation is clearly he's being brought in to win a national championship. 10 wins and exits in the first round are not good enough.
Let me ask you this, Stephen. Which program do you have more faith in to win a national championship out of the SEC? LSU under Kiffin or Texas under Sarkisian?
Man, that's a tough one. Ooh, I might go LSU, but not by much.
You got to remember, Arch is still
right
on the team in Texas, right?
Which, by the way, somebody looked pretty good on Friday night, right? So, man, that's a hard question because I could make a case either way. I might, maybe I'm being prisoner of the moment and, kind of being excited to see what Lane Kiffin could put together at LSU. I might go 51-49 in terms of percentages. Would you go Texas?
I think I would, just because, we have not even really seen Kiffin at LSU, who he's hiring and things of that nature. But yeah, I mean, I expect them both to be in it annually, if that makes sense. Is it realistic to be in the playoff every year? That's the expectation, but it probably shouldn't be. But to be in the race every year should be. So yeah, as long as Kiffin's there at LSU, as long as Sarkisian's at Texas, and all the resources they have at each of those, Yeah, I think they're going to be in the mix every year.
Throw Kirby and Georgia in there, you're looking at 3 of the national championship frontrunners. I mean, one storyline in all this, Mike, is that maybe that LSU has upgraded in its coaching. And so, I also think Florida has upgraded quite a bit. And so the SEC got better from a coaching perspective, which lifts the whole conference up, which I know makes SEC Mike very happy. Mike, I do think in the scrutiny at LSU, that every move that Kiffin makes going forward, every win or loss, if they fall short, like that's going to be ramped up to like a different level than we saw in Oxford. And so to your point, like my biggest fear of all this is the exit, because we've seen, and you could see some parallels maybe to like Urban Meyer. It's like everywhere he went, they won. It always ended poorly. I don't think we'll end up that poorly if you're Lane Kiffin and LSU, but that's kind of the one thing is like, can he sustain something there over the next 10 years and not have some sort of crazy falling out or exit there?
Right. Well, hey, shout out to Junior. He gave us $5. Jon Sumrall won the day. Very impressed with him. SEC on notice. Stand by to get some. Get some. Thoughts on Jon Sumrall to Florida, Stephen?
I liked his Lane Kiffin joke to start out with. That was pretty good. A good way to maybe break the ice, even if it was a little awkward there. Mike, I hate to sound like a broken record. I know some Florida fans are kind of disappointed in like hiring a G5 coach. And I think one of the kind of writing principles of this carousel was there was just not a lot of names out there. Like the pool of candidates was like these 10 coaches, and they're probably going to fill these 10 jobs. And so if you weren't going to be able to pick off Clark Lee, Jeff Brom, one of the other guys, Brent Key, that are at their alma maters, Jon Sumrall is a really good hire. And he is almost built in the factory to be an SEC coach. I mean, he's from the SEC footprint. He's coached as an assistant. He's played in the SEC, and he's been a head coach at 2 G5 jobs in the SEC footprint. I think he gets it. And I think my biggest concern for him is going to be the offensive coordinator position, because oftentimes when we see defensive-minded coaches get hired, they whiff on the first offensive coordinator hire. And he's saying all the right things. I know Joe Craddock is his OC at Tulane. I know Arkansas fans probably shudder when they hear that name. They've been fine, but I wonder if maybe they go a little bit bigger at Florida. But he's knows the SEC footprint. He's won at 2 jobs. He's been a head coach, Mike, for 4 years, and they've made the conference title game 4 years. Like the guy knows what he's doing, and he knows the SEC footprint. I think that's a really good hire for Florida.
Yeah, no, I do too. My only concern, and you kind of hinted at it there, is with the offensive coordinator talk, but just if he fits the mold of what Florida wants, at the end of the day, winning should be enough to please people. But Florida fans, they're a special breed, Stephen. They are a special breed. Got to score. It's got to look good. So again, that's the only question mark that I would have with Jon Sumrall and Florida. But again, I think he's a hell of a coach. I think he'll do well. But it almost would have made more sense. Am I crazy, Stephen? If we could switch Sumrall and Alex Golesh. So thoughts on Alex Golesh to Auburn? And again, I'm not saying these are bad hires. These are excellent hires. But it almost, Golesh at Florida, Sumrall at Auburn. I just think I would have liked that a little bit more. Am I crazy?
I don't think that's crazy, Mike. I do think on Jon Sumrall, there is one other thing that does fascinate me about this hire, and that is the GM and how they're going to break that up, because I guess it sounds like the two Caldwell and Sumrall didn't really have much of a background together before this. They kind of talked before he took the job. It's interesting to see how the GMs and front offices of these colleges are already coming together, and what does that mean for split in terms of personnel and evaluating and coaching. So that is something that we'll have to watch. First of all, Mike, I loved the line by Alex Golesh today, and you knew that somebody had prepared him. He's like, I don't golf. I care about football. And so immediately I was like, won the press conference. Don't need to say anything else. Mike, I think if you just look at Golesh's track record, he's got SEC experience from his time at Tennessee. He's coached in the footprint at South Florida. I think he's one of the best offensive minds in college football. USF's offense, it's not some gimmicky offense where they throw it 50 times a game. No, they have a power run game that they've paired with a better defense. And that's kind of been the evolution of Golesh at South Florida. They've had the good offense, they have the skill talent, but they needed to get better on defense this year. And they did. And as a result, they were in the mix to be one of the top group of 5 teams and potentially at one point make the playoff this year. So I love the idea. He doesn't golf. He's a better offensive mind than Hugh Freeze. He's got a track record of success. And I love the fact that, he put an emphasis on improving the defense this offseason and it came through. So I was a little surprised when they hired Golesh. I was terrified for Auburn. They were going to promote DJ Durkin. I'm very glad for Auburn fans that they went with Alex Golesh. This is a good hire.
Yeah. And again, you don't ever make a hire for a player or even a handful of players, anything of that nature. I think that would be a huge mistake. And I don't think they did that in this case. But I do want to say I think just what little we've seen of Deuce Knight, I think he fits remarkably well what Golesh will want to do. So, we'll see if Deuce stays. I have no clue. It was funny, Stephen. We saw Deuce Knight, and then last week we could talk about it here in a minute. But Kamario Taylor from Mississippi State looking really good. It's like which one of these quarterbacks is Lane Kiffin going to want at LSU? Right. I don't know. We'll see. But if Deuce Knight stays, I think he fits Golesh to a T, which could be just a nice little cherry on top of a really good hire.
Also, I think Cam Coleman, if you're trying to keep somebody happy and keep him from exiting the portal, somebody with Golesh's background. Also, Eric Singleton with another year of eligibility. I mean, you never want to hire somebody that just fits the current personnel. You have to think like, okay, over the next X amount of years, long term, is he the right fit? And I don't think it's about the now. I think it's about what Golesh can do. And I think he also, it's not in the long term, it's great, but in the short term, I think his hire could really check off the boxes that Freeze couldn't do, which is develop quarterbacks, maximize your skill talent, put an exciting product on the field. Auburn's offense has been better the last few games. And just think about what an offseason or two under Alex Golesh, the track record of developing quarterbacks, and schematically this offense, we've seen it work at Tennessee and Mississippi State. So Auburn got a lot more interesting, I think, with Alex Golesh as new head coach.
Well, speaking of interesting, Stephen, Pete Golding, head coach now at Ole Miss. That to me is pretty interesting. I didn't think he would even get consideration, but the timing of it, we got this playoff run coming. I don't hate it. I'm not the move I would have made necessarily, but I think just their hand was so forced. What's your thoughts, first of all, on Pete Golding as a head coach? I don't literally think we've seen it, which is another sticking point for me. But thoughts on them making that move and the future of Ole Miss under Pete Golding?
I think Ole Miss had to do this because I think if you made a list of candidates for Ole Miss, it's probably pretty short at this point just because of the timing of it. Honestly, I think Will Stein would have been on my list if you asked me last weekend. Will Stein, maybe Alex Golesh, maybe Brent Key. Like you try to get somebody in there, but if you can't, then Pete Golding's a pretty good fallback option. Just that he's been on staff, much like some of these other guys. I like the experience in the footprint. Louisiana native. He's coached at Alabama. He's coached at Ole Miss. He's been around good coaches. I think that's a check in his favor. Also, a key part of this run, a much improved defense. I mean, they led the SEC in scoring defense last season. So defense has gotten better. He's got good experience in the footprint. He's worked for good coaches. Like I think all of those are in his favor. The one thing, and I think it's literally the same thing we talked about with Mississippi State when Jeff Lebby was hired. Golding's almost like the defensive version of Lebby and getting hired at this point is he just doesn't have experience. But you also, if you're Ole Miss, you have to weigh promoting him to head coach, doing a search, and doing that against the backdrop of going into the college football playoff. So given the timing of it, and also trying to keep as much run of this as together, I think it makes sense. Mike, also one more thing on Golding. The blueprint is there for Ole Miss. Kiffin has started this run. They've invested. They've done all the right things from NIL and transfer portal. I think if you're Golding, you just got to pick it up where it's left off, make some tweaks, hire the right offensive coordinator, which is, like I said, with Sumrall's defensive guys hiring offensive guys, sometimes they tend to struggle with that. That would be my only question. But if you can keep this going, the blueprint's in place to keep winning games here at Ole Miss.
Now, I'm not rooting for this, Stephen, but it must be asked. If Ole Miss comes out here, we don't even know who they're going to be playing. But let's say they're a favorite. They're playing at home in the play, which they should be, given their record and everything. But let's say they look just awful. Would there be any consideration to, man, we made a mistake. We gotta bring in or would that be way too soon?
I think it would be way too soon. And I think, let's think about like if that happened, the opponent on the other side is probably either going to be Oklahoma, Alabama, Notre Dame, or I guess some crazy scenario, it could be Texas Tech. So you're losing to a top 10 to 15 team. And given all that's happened with all the noise and distractions and everything else, like it wouldn't stun me to see maybe a little bit of a less than focused roster. But this is the college football playoff. And so I think we'll see a motivated Ole Miss team. My also question is who do you have on the offensive staff the rest of the way to make this work? And then also, what's that mean going forward? So I think it would probably create a little bit of doubt, but I think long-term, I think still Golding would still be the head coach in 2026.
Mm-hmm. And then the last one, Stephen, which I hope these fans give him a shot. I wasn't ready to when they announced it, but I'm over that, Stephen. Ryan Silverfield. I think I called him Satterfield, Silver Fox, Silver F word. I just, what thoughts on this man at Arkansas? I've seen a lot. I'm not seeing a lot positive. What's your thoughts on him?
Mike, I think of the coaching moves, this is probably not one of my favorites. But to your point, I think we need to give Ryan Silverfield a chance here. And let's kind of talk maybe like pros and cons of this move. Because I think immediately people are just out on him and he hasn't coached a game at Arkansas. So let me give you some things, maybe some positives that I would build on if I was Ryan Silverfield. First of all, Memphis. They had Justin Fuente, Mike Norvell, and then they hired Ryan Silverfield. Silverfield was promoted. He was on staff. I think one thing that makes me absolutely root for him is that he started at the absolute bottom of the coaching world and has worked his way up. If you look at what Memphis was, like after Norvell left, this team was one of the top group of 5 teams. They kind of lost their way for a couple of years, thought he might be on the hot seat, and then they bounced back. 29-9 over the last 3 years. They've had 2 10-win seasons in that span. I think if he was just living off of like Norvell's success, we would have seen a dramatic drop off like after that first 2 or 3 years. So I think he knows what he's doing. Just the fact that after that tenure, last couple of years, they've been in the mix to be one of the top teams in the American. So I think he's probably a little bit better than I gave him credit for now that I've had a chance to kind of take a step back. Also think in this era of college football, I give G5 coaches that win games a lot of credit because when you have to replace 60 to 70 players on your roster every year and you still nearly won the American this year, I think he deserves a little bit of credit for that. Now, what I would say is there were some head-scratching losses like to UAB this year. His staffing is going to be super important, I think. I don't think he can just bring his Memphis guys over here and expect to succeed in the SEC. I think they're going to have to pay up for some OC and especially on the defensive side of the ball. So I don't know if that maybe give you some pros and cons in there, but I think give Ryan Silverfield a chance, give him a chance to hire his staff and see what kind of CEO he can be at Arkansas.
Yeah, and he's only been on the job one day, Stephen, and he's apparently landing a bunch of commitments. So That's good news. At least he can recruit. That was something he did well at Memphis. Recruited well. I think he had the top recruiting rankings in that conference for several, at least according to the graphic I saw. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just hard. It's hard to get hyped up for that, especially if you got yourself psyched up for the Russian boar, Alex Golesh. And I don't know what happened there, but the more I hear, Stephen, I think they did have the Russian boar, and I think he pivoted late there, landed at Auburn. So it's a little kick in the nuts there. Not the first time it's happened to Arkansas, but hey, and also, Stephen, I mean, how many times you've been doing this just as long, if not longer than I have? How many times do we see one of these coaching searches where we all you miss on your top guy or two or three even, and then it's the guy you actually hire turns out to be better than any of them. I mean, that happens all the time.
Yeah, and also personal demerit for me, I'm going to put my hand up here. I'll grade these hires this offseason, and I can guarantee you there are going to be several that I look at them and go, man, that's a win. They're going to win a lot of games, and they don't. And they're going to be guys that you think are not going to win, and they do. It's an inexact science, Mike, because there are so many variables that don't translate from one job to the next. You also mentioned the roster, like recruiting thing. And that is a check like in Silverfield's favor. Like he's recruited good rosters. Memphis has the job potential to be the best, one of the best in the American. But the fact they didn't win the conference is kind of a sticking point. Now, I would also say if we're getting rid of divisions, like we get all these like 2, 3, 4-way tiebreakers, it becomes a little bit harder with all these good teams clustered at the top. So there's maybe a little bit more leeway in there. So I think his ability to recruit transfers every year and put together solid high school classes gives me some hope that if I'm Arkansas, at least he can assemble a good roster. Now he just needs to go hire the right coordinators to make this work. Would also say too, Mike, you also can only hire the coaches that want your job. And if Alex Golesh is choosing between Auburn and Arkansas, nobody's going to blame him for picking Auburn because it is a better job. That's just kind of the reality. At one point, it seemed like it was Womack or Silverfield or Golesh. And if you take out Golesh, you're down to Womack or Silverfield. I don't know if that makes Arkansas fans feel any better, but that was kind of where I felt the search was headed going into Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm. And you just made me think of something, Stephen, that I meant to ask you in regards to Kentucky. And really, it could apply to any of these teams, but you mentioned divisional play. There may not be a team that has been hurt more than Kentucky leaving divisional format here, East and West. Now, not that this year was necessarily a gauntlet, but they caught Mississippi State out of the West, and they played the East. They had a good run against Carolinas and Missouris, and Vanderbilt was down. They beat Tennessee, I think, twice in 20 years. But point being, do you think removing divisional play has helped some and hurt others in this conference?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if I'm Kentucky, maybe the schedule gets a little bit harder. If I'm Arkansas, maybe I'm not playing the grind of Alabama, Texas A&M, LSU, however the schedules end up working out now to 15 years down the road. Could get easier, could get harder. Mike, I would also think too that, I think everything in college football is cyclical too. Like one year you're going to have a harder schedule, next year maybe a little easier. We think these teams are going to be good, they end up being down. But I think to your point, yes, on Kentucky, like the road may get harder without divisions, and a 9-game SEC slate is only going to make it more difficult for some of these teams as they try to get bowl eligible every year.
Mm-hmm. Well, Stephen, it's getting hard out there for a lot of us, right? Because it's a holiday season. And we're trying to make it easy on you. If you need a gift idea for someone, or maybe even just for yourself, Stephen, help out the show. Help yourself out, really, is what you're doing. By going to ridge.com/SEC right now. They got Cyber Monday going on. Don't click off this. But when we're done, go check them out. Ridge.com/SEC. Deals up to 47% off, Stephen, here on Cyber Monday and this week. And right now they got the Ridge 2.0, the most refined Ridge wallet ever created. They sent us over some Ridge wallets. Shane loves it. I love it. I liked it so much, I said, hey, can I get an extra one? Because my man Steven needs him a Ridge wallet, so we got him the Ridge as well. This is made out of premium materials like aluminum, titanium, and carbon fiber, Steven. And check this out. I didn't realize this last time they were with us. Shout out ridgewallet.com/SEC. They got team-specific ones. So I should have sent you a Pittsburgh Steelers one, Stephen. They got all the NFL, but more importantly, I double-checked this. They got all 16 SEC teams. So if you're a Bamer or a Dog or a Vol, even a Commodore, they got you covered. Personalized Ridge wallets over at ridge.com/SEC. Go help yourself and help the pod by supporting the show and utilizing these outstanding sponsors like Ridge Wallet.
Mike, I love the timing of our friends over at Ridge. The Ridge wallet is fantastic, Mike. Thanks for sending it to me. It's I got to use it. Keeps everything secure in there. Just like Lane Kiffin and his, millions of dollars. We could, all these new coaches, they could become spokespersons for the Ridge because it'd be such a great way to keep all those millions of dollars tucked safe in that wallet.
Right. And trust me, Kiffin's going to need to keep all that money he don't care about, apparently. He's got to keep it safe. You know what? So he should get a Ridge too.
He can get maybe one side Ole Miss, one side LSU. He could have flipped it on Sunday.
Hey, shout out Brendan Rodarte. Appreciate you for the $20, Steven. I've been saving this one. We could talk Texas A&M here, but I just thought this would go with it here. Should Texas reconsider their out-of-conference games next year, Steven, if they're not in the playoff this year? Say all you want about losing to Florida, but if they scheduled Rice instead of Ohio State, they would be hosting a playoff game with a 10-2 record. What's your thoughts on Brandon's question?
Brandon, I think that is a interesting question because I've been thinking about this myself over the last couple of weeks. Because, first of all, I don't know if the playoff committee was supposed to take into account strength of schedule more this year. And instead, all they've done is organize teams by 0, 1, 2, 3, the amount of losses in the win and loss column. I also think in general, we have to get away from this idea that a one-loss team is automatically better than a two-loss team, and a two-loss team is automatically better than a three-loss team. That's just absent of the Texas situation. I mean, just very broadly. So I'm a little disappointed they haven't weighed those things. I also think they have not been consistent enough in their application of head-to-head, because there's several things here: Miami, Notre Dame, Vanderbilt, Texas, and there's other ones they do respect. So all that to say is, sorry for the bad playoff committee rant. Mike, I think the answer to that is I honestly don't know what the right approach is, because it does feel like in some years that could actually, benefit them. And this year the bubble is going to be 10-2, and last year it was kind of closer to 9-3 teams. So every year is going to be a little bit different. But I think given if in a 9-game SEC slate, if Texas is challenging itself with 9 SEC games plus a game like at Ohio State or something, and they're not getting rewarded for it, I don't know what the benefit of it is. So I think maybe the answer to the question is, I think we have to kind of see what happens with that 9-game slate and how the committee handles that. And I would also, again, maybe this offseason, it's a push from Sankey or other conference commissioners that we've got to apply the strength of schedule metrics appropriately if you want teams to schedule good opponents, because I think not having Texas and Ohio State play, not having good non-conference games is not good for college football. We've got to have those games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. So naturally that leads into this. Steven, your thoughts on Texas? We haven't hit on it. Beating down A&M, handing them their first loss. Man, it was a tough one. I think Texas A&M clearly has got themselves a Texas problem. Or, Steven, you could swing it and say, hey, they just didn't want to play in the SEC championship. They wanted a whole playoff game. Maybe I had someone say, well, I think Marcel Reed threw this game. You know what I mean? So that should be investigated. But I'm not saying that. I'm just saying someone approached me with that. But what's your thoughts on that?
Mike, first of all, how awesome of it is it going to be to see College Station hosting a playoff game? Just one of the craziest, awesome atmospheres in the SEC, getting a home playoff game. That is going to be a fantastic sight. So I can't wait for that. So I guess in a way, it's like, if you're Texas A&M, you obviously wanted to play for the SEC championship, but the consolation prize is a home playoff game that you should be favored to win. That's pretty good. Mike, I think what's interesting about this game, though, is the two halves were completely different. I thought in the first half, I was like, there's no way Texas is going to win this game, right? Texas A&M seemed like they were in control. Arch had too much pressure on him. He, once again, his receivers seemed to forget how to catch. And then in the second half, and Mike, I know I was getting tired by that point of the night, but did I spy a running game start to come alive for Texas? So the rushing attack came alive. Arch made some throws. He made that nice touchdown run. And, of course, Texas defense stepped up with a couple stops and those interceptions. So really, to use a bad phrase, it was a tale of two halves, with Arch outplaying Marcel Reed there in the second half and delivering a big win for Texas. Did
this result lead you to question anything about A&M as they make their march into the college football playoff? And I just mean, maybe a little bit less of confidence that they could win it all or anything like that, or maybe some flaws were kind of highlighted here. What's your thoughts on that?
How much of Marcel Reed's 2 interceptions and maybe just overall play do you think might have been due to his injury?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not one that I'd really thought about, but it certainly seemed. And it always seems this way with him, in my mind, Stephen. You tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like he can get into an issue where he's kind of forcing the issue.
Yeah.
And I certainly felt that late in this game. I'm trying to think of some other ones with, Auburn last year, South Carolina. He's gotten significantly better, but I still see some of that in there. And even Notre Dame, I know they made the comeback. But that was not a elite performance by him that I recall. His numbers are impressive. But again, you got to actually watch these games. Mario Craver, when he goes beast mode and makes everybody look like a fool on a, what was it, like a 87 something yard. Now he deserves credit for getting him the ball, but hell, if I could have had 87 yards if my receivers were going to do that, you know what I mean?
That play is more against Notre Dame is more Mario Craver than Marcel Reed.
Right.
When you could make a crazy highlight run like that. The reason why I posed that question to you was I think that second half performance would worry me just a bit, but it's nothing I don't think that makes me worry about long-term issues. Like you said, there are some moments where forcing the ball, I thought like in that South Carolina game, they were all pretty shaky in the first half. And of course they came out and looked great in the second half. So I guess it might be small things. We've seen their defense struggle on the road. We see some interceptions at times. Those small things are problematic, but also think they're not anything to scare me. Like I think this team can still win a couple games in the college football playoff, but that also requires Marcel Reed to probably be at his best. And I don't think you can afford, they threw 2 picks, lost to Texas. If you throw 2 picks against Oregon or, Ohio State, you're definitely not winning that game.
And let me ask you this, Stephen. Again, the question is not, should Texas get in? Should this, should that? I'm not really, because that's questions being asked time and time again. My question to you, Mr. Stephen Lassan, I'm going to look at the current rankings here in the playoff, but I'm just kind of curious your opinion if Texas could beat any of the teams that are projected to be in the playoff. I'm just curious. So I'm looking at teams like, and I think some of these are kind of obvious, but Tulane, maybe not those teams, but teams teams that Texas potentially could face if they were to make the playoff, do you think they could possibly beat some of these teams that are ranked higher than them?
I do. I actually think in terms of team strength, I think they are a top 12 team. Now, I know you're not asking me about the playoff, but I don't think there's a path for this team to get in at this point, like absent some sort of crazy chaos. But yes, they've already beaten Oklahoma this year. Oklahoma was 8th in the AP poll. Obviously, they lost pretty bad to Georgia. They beat Texas A&M. I think they could beat a lot of these teams in the playoff. But also, what Texas team are we going to get if that scenario was to play out? Are we going to get the one that almost lost to Kentucky? Or are we getting the one that beat Texas A&M and beat Oklahoma and beat Vanderbilt? That's kind of the problem with this team, has been a lack of consistency among the offensive line and lack of rushing attack as well.
Well, Stephen, I mean, here's the real question, because this is what I care about. This is how they should do it. Who in the hell wouldn't sign up for Texas at Texas A&M, or even better probably at Oklahoma? So they never play home and home. At Oklahoma, first round of the playoffs.
Sign me up. Don't say no more.
That's what I'm saying. This is how they should be doing it, you know?
Yeah, man, it's got to be frustrating, I think. I know SEC Mike is frustrated by this, but last year, Ole Miss not getting in, Alabama, like these teams that are top 12 in terms of just, and I know it's a hypothetical and people will say the SEC's undefeated in hypotheticals, like, sure. The point is, like, if we're trying to find the 12 best teams, and this is I think a broader conversation, is making sure that we're using the right methods and metrics to get there. And if Texas was 10-2 this year, I think they'd be in. I also think, Mike, this is probably why the playoff is going to expand to 16 at some point, because I think seeing these teams get left out, I mean, to your point, who wouldn't want to see Texas play at Oklahoma, see Oklahoma play at Texas, or see, Alabama play, Texas in the first round this year or the second round? I think there's just too much money and there's too many teams missing that we're going to get a few extra spots. So maybe that's the gift, I guess, of Ole Miss and Alabama, and Texas probably missing the playoff now. I mean, those two teams last year, Texas this year, we get more spots in there.
Right. Well, speaking of gift, Stephen, it was like a treat, gift, whatever you want to call it, to watch this year's Iron Bowl, because it went down to the wire, Stephen, as Alabama marches their way to the SEC championship by beating Auburn 27-20 in Jordan-Hare Stadium. Stephen, still trying to figure out what in the world Kalen DeBoer was doing, going for it. It worked out. He could have been a goat. Instead, he could have been he ended a hero. He could have been a damn goat. Had that not worked, what was your thoughts on the Iron Bowl, Stephen, going down to the wire?
Well, Mike, it certainly wasn't boring, was it? That last play call, because boy, oh boy, I was stunned that he went for it. I thought, man, they're just going to kick the field goal. They're going to play defense. I know their defense had given up some big plays. The yardage was kind of out of whack, but I thought, okay, you're down here. You got to get points. And then he went for it and connected. And I thought, oh man, that did it. That sealed it. What a call to get to the SEC championship game. By the way, Alabama did run for 158 yards. Maybe the committee will like that on Tuesday night. But Mike, I will say on the concern side, Ty Simpson's been a little bit off the last couple weeks, I think. And also Ryan Williams just being completely invisible in the passing game. Those seem like two things they might need to get fixed before they go into the playoff. But they have a chance, I think, to make some noise in the playoff. I think some of the passing game things with Simpson has been they've played Oklahoma, they played on the road at Auburn, not a surprise, but they've got to get this passing game kind of clicking on all cylinders if they want to make a run to the national championship.
I think that's fair, Stephen, but I would also say they're probably, them in Oklahoma perhaps, some of the more tested teams that'll be in the playoff field, and that could serve them extremely well, particularly for some of these teams. Looking at you, Ohio State. Looking at you, Indiana. That maybe not, they may have a tough game or two they played, but they didn't play 5 or 6 or 7. You know what I mean? Like some of these, and not all the SEC teams, but again, Oklahoma and Alabama, certainly they kind of fit that mold. So finding ways to win when, the odds are stacked against you on the road. Very impressive performance, I thought. One that could have easily gotten away from Alabama, but they got it done. And that throw that Ty Simpson had, the touchdown, the guy in his face kind of fading back of the end zone. I mean, that was one of the better throws I'd seen this season.
Yeah, I think maybe the word for Alabama this season has just been clutch. I mean, you mentioned that throw. There was the throw on the 4th down touchdown pass that we were just talking about, but also when the game was on the line against South Carolina, making the plays, clutch throws against Missouri, the late call against Georgia. I mean, they are battle tested, in finding ways to win games when you aren't playing your A+ game could serve this team really well, because there have been times this year where they're not playing their A+ game and they're finding ways to win. And so it feels like there's a little bit of like meat on the bone, essentially. If they can solve some of these things as they go into the playoff, they got a chance to make a run, because if they lose the SEC championship game, Mike, they're going to be seated at the bottom of the bracket, and they might get Ole Miss in the first round. Maybe they get Texas Tech in the second round, whatever it works out. They've got a chance to really put some wins together if they can get this thing kind of clicking.
Well, I'll tell you who's clicking right now, Stephen. We could spend just about 15 seconds on this one if you'd like. Vanderbilt goes into Tennessee and whips them up 45-24. What an embarrassing way for Josh Heupel and them Vols to end the season. And people are just trying to get, Heupel to fire somebody, anybody, Stephen, to fix this travesty of a football team. I think the bigger story is Vanderbilt. Diego Pavia might very well win the Heisman. And, I thought this was going to be the result we got. I didn't think Vanderbilt would whoop Tennessee's ass like they did, but let's give them credit. That's exactly what they did. Meanwhile, I've kind of been doubting Tennessee all year. I don't know, Stephen. They just 8-4. That feels about right. I think they're an average team that is. There's been some highlights there, but there's been some lowlights too. So, what was your thoughts on Vanderbilt dominating on old Rocky Top?
Mike, it's not surprising that Vanderbilt won this game. I think the fashion that they won is what surprised me, because early in the game, Vanderbilt was really just stopping itself with the turnovers. But I did think at some point Tennessee would find a way to get a couple stops on defense in the second half, and we would have that kind of high scoring back and forth like we thought leading up to it. We did see a lot of scoring. It just was on the Vanderbilt side of things. And I think there's a lot that I think we can talk about with Tennessee's defense and some of the issues that it had. I think a lot of this, the credit has to go to Diego Pavia in this Vanderbilt offense. They are a machine. They have been on fire since the last couple of weeks of the season, whether it was Kentucky, whether it was Tennessee, these games down the stretch. Pavia has been just obliterating SEC defenses, and Tennessee's defense, with the way it has played this year, it had no chance on Saturday to get stops with the way Pavia was playing. So yes, Tennessee has issues, but let's also make sure we give a lot of credit to Pavia, who I think should win the Heisman Trophy at this point. I mean, if he's not at least in New York, it is a massive, massive travesty to this season, because the season that he's had, the value that he's got to Vanderbilt, what he's done for this program, getting them to the doorstep of the playoff. I think he should win it. I don't know if he will, but at least he should be in New York. And Saturday's performance was kind of one of the reasons why all that should happen.
Yeah, I mean, it was just an epic week for Vanderbilt. Stephen Clark-Lee signs a contract extension. There's all kinds of buzz. We got signing day on Wednesday. It's unbelievable, Stephen. But or early signing period, as it's now called, starts Wednesday, ends Friday. But there's a lot of buzz, Stephen, that number one quarterback, 5-star Jared Curtis from Nashville will flip from Georgia to Vanderbilt. Now maybe I've heard some optimism on Georgia's side too. So maybe he needed one more time he's already committed to Georgia twice. Maybe third time's a charm, and he's looking for some early signing day love. I don't know. But again, this could be a new era. I mean, college footballs are changing, and there may not be better proof of that than old Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mike, isn't it that potential news later this week, the news of the contract extension isn't it a sign that, yeah, Diego Pavia, we think, has played his last game at Vanderbilt in the postseason, but they're not going to go back to being the same old Vanderbilt. As long as they keep investing in the program, and especially to keep guys like Tim Beck and Jerry Kill around, the assistants and what they've done, they're not going back to 2-10. Sure, it's going to be harder in 9-game SEC slate. It's going to be harder without Diego Pavia. But at the same time, I think they're taking the right steps to invest and also to become a more relevant year in and year out program in the SEC. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, absolutely. No, they're certainly not going to go 10-2 every year.
Right.
But yeah, I just don't want them to be a joke. And that's what we've been calling for. They were basically an automatic buy. They still need to do a better job getting fans to show up, but you would think this many wins that they would. So yeah, now Arkansas, Kentucky, you got to clean up your damn act because Vanderbilt's making you look pretty bad. You know what?
Maybe Vanderbilt's success this year also should serve as motivation for those programs to show, hey, we can do this. But also say, especially in the case of Kentucky, if Vanderbilt just whipped us that bad, maybe we ought to look at what we're doing. Because if the worst team in the conference has suddenly gone to the doorstep of making the playoff, why can't we do that? Why are they beating us this bad? So it ought to be motivation on two fronts to fix it and to figure out how they let Vanderbilt pass them, and to how to become a better program in the SEC in the short term. So maybe. In a way, Vanderbilt's helping to rise the bottom of the conference with their success and motivating other teams to do so as well.
And speaking of getting beat bad, so let's swing it back to Tennessee here. Thoughts on what, if any, changes need to be made for Tennessee, because this certainly is not good enough. Again, I don't think it's like doom and gloom. We got to remember where this team was, Nico situation and all that. But you could also spin it, Stephen. You could say, well, they lost every meaningful game essentially. Even though Florida, I think Florida was awful, but winning at Florida, I mean, they could build a statue outside of Neyland, and I would honor it as a win over Florida because they're so rare. But you could also swing it, Stephen, and say every team they lost to, playoff team or should be in the playoff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where is it, Stephen? Is it, hey, we just fell short against the four best teams, four arguably playoff teams, or man, we didn't even beat anybody worth anything this year? Where's the truth there, you think?
Man, this is a good debate, because let's not forget Tennessee is one season removed from making the playoff. They are months away from their starting quarterback leaving for UCLA and a scramble to find somebody to start this season. Also, Mike, I know you have talked about this, but I do think we have to give Heupel maybe a little bit of slack for losing two cornerbacks basically at the start of the year. Jermon McCoy may end up being a first-round pick without playing a game this year. And so I wonder, if you take away two guys like that on defense, how does that alter your whole thing? Like, think about taking two potential all-SEC players. Certainly in the case of McCoy, he was a preseason All-American. How does that impact your defense? Like, it feels like that's a pretty big factor in all of that. Now, that doesn't necessarily answer for all the defensive issues that we saw. So I guess what I would say is, Mike, I expected this to be a transition year for Tennessee, given all they lost, the quarterback situation. You could also look at this and say they were one play away from beating Georgia. And we look at this team and go 9-3, and they met expectations. They don't feel stuck. They just feel like this is an important offseason to kind of steer the program back on track. Does that make sense?
No, it does. And going back to what you said about missing the players, I would argue, Stephen, that, and this is accurate information here, that you throw Nico, you didn't even mention Boo Carter, but I'm throwing him into this mix, Gerard McCoy and Ricky Gibson, the two corners. I would say pretty concrete. Those are four of the top 10 highest paid players, and probably even higher, like top 8 players on the roster entering, post spring, what have you. And you essentially just remove them from your roster. And yeah, everybody gets injured or suffers injuries. So it's not like Tennessee's the only one, but I don't think they were constructed to just not have any good players in the secondary and replace a quarterback. Now, again, we got to credit Tennessee for finding like Colton Hood, right? And they had the freshman Ty Redmond come on, which he turned out to be a pretty solid player, but he basically cost them the Georgia game. All Bobo did was like, "Where's that guy at? Throw at him." And that's what a good offensive coordinator does. I'm not calling that guy out. That was literally a true freshman making his first career big time action, and he got exposed a little bit. So, I mean, you just got to take a little bit deeper dive, and I don't think, to your point, it's not fire everybody. Everybody's got to go, but there are little cracks in the foundation that really need to be worked on, because this was far from a playoff team. And again, you go make the playoffs every year, certainly not, but that should be the goal. And if changes aren't made, I don't know how realistic it is to actually get there.
I trust Heupel to figure the offense out. I do worry a little bit about the defense. I am curious to see if anything happens to Tim Banks, because I do think some of this, he's 1 year removed from putting together one of the best defenses in the SEC. And you take away the two corners, Arian Carter missed some time. There was some other defensive linemen who missed some time. Could they have been better? Yeah, absolutely. But also, if you take away, like you said, 4 of the 5 best players on the team, it's going to hurt your defense in a probably massive capacity. So I think the question for me on Tennessee is they don't feel stuck, but it feels like this is an important offseason. And it feels like an important offseason because if you start to think about the hierarchy a little bit, it's pretty clear that Georgia is the team to beat, right? And then you've got Alabama, you got Texas A&M, you got Texas. We'll see what happens with Ole Miss with Kiffin gone. Certainly think LSU is going to be better next year. So how does Tennessee go from being 8-4 to how do they get back to 10-2? And then within that, how do they figure out how to beat a Georgia? How are they going to beat Texas A&M? They play them next year. They play Texas next year. They play LSU. Like, that's who you're going to be judged against. So how do you close that gap? And it probably starts by improving the defense. And then number 2, what other program-wide things need to be done to get to that next level? Because I think Heupel's got Tennessee in a pretty good spot. Feels like they could be 9-3, 10-2. But also is that, how do you go from 9-3 to maybe winning multiple playoff games? That's where I have a lot of doubt right now. And I think that's why it's a critical offseason to figure out how you get there if you're Josh Heupel.
Yeah, and shout out to Chris Lowe reported this. He got in touch with Heupel. I'm sure you saw this, Stephen, but I just thought this was funny. He was asked about if he's a candidate at the Penn State opening. And he said, I wouldn't want low expectations. That's part of why I want to be here. We'll win big. Now, I took that as a shot at Penn State. Many people did. But he apparently, the information was just kind of inaccurately kind of labeled like that. But basically, his point being, he's not running from the expectations at Tennessee. They want to elevate things. And like you said, they're going to win big. So not going to Penn State. Looks like they're targeting the BYU coach. That is the latest. So that's pretty interesting. But where they don't have coaching issues, Stephen, is in Oklahoma and now LSU with old Lane Kiffin. But he had nothing to do with this one, Stephen. This was all the Sooners coming out on top. But was it? Ooh, buddy, this was one ugly, ugly football game, Stephen, where I thought Oklahoma was going to cave to the pressure. I mean, just when your offense couldn't look any worse, I thought, then it looks a little bit worse. 3 turnovers for John Mateer, 3 interceptions. Thank God for Satania and his 121 receiving yards. He saved the day. Oklahoma's awesome defense, again, saved the day, making crucial stops, a lot of fourth down stops, interception in the red zone. If not for that, LSU would have squandered Oklahoma's playoff chances. I guess you could say this was a good game, but it was a good game that was hard to watch, if that makes sense.
It was a close game, right? It was hard to watch offensively, Mike. But hey, if you're Oklahoma, it's a win. It doesn't matter at this point how you get them. You're 10-2. You're on the doorstep of going to the college football playoff. And thank goodness for this Oklahoma defense, because with the turnovers and kind of bad setup on Saturday, that Oklahoma defense just delivering. And then on the other side of it, I know the interceptions are bad for Mateer, and he's got to be a lot more consistent just throwing the ball downfield. But being able to bounce back after struggling to hit those big plays in the second half to Burks and Satanga, getting those big plays in the passing game kind of bailed out what was a pretty bad day overall for the offense, Mike. But hey, it was ugly. It certainly wasn't pretty. It was hard to watch. But man, if you're Oklahoma, you dodged one on Saturday, and all that means is now you're going to the college football playoff. It doesn't matter how ugly it was. You're in there now.
Right. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, Stephen. I mean, they would have been the laughing stock of college football if they would have dropped this game and missed the playoff, and now they march on. And I mean, no one will remember how close this one was if they make a deep playoff run. You know what?
Right. And I think that's the interesting thing for me about Oklahoma is we know defensively they are going to be a nightmare for whoever they play in the first round. And if they get beyond that, it also feels like the next couple of weeks, they got a chance. They're going to have about, they have about 20 or 18 to 20 days before they play their first playoff game. You have a chance to kind of reset and regroup offensively. I don't think they can get massively better, but we know they've been banged up at running back. We know they've been banged up in the offensive line. Mateer's been hurt, maybe from the thumb injury still. Having a couple weeks to kind of take a breath, take a step back, do some self-scouting. If your defense is as good as this, if you can just be 15% better offensively, you've got a chance to win a couple playoff games. So this Oklahoma defense will keep them in it. If the offense can give them anything else, they got a chance to, like I said, I think they could win a game or two in the playoff.
Are there any teams that are particularly a bad matchup or, for Oklahoma in the playoff that they can see in the first round?
Right now, Mike, I have Notre Dame projected on the other side to play Oklahoma. And first of all, seeing Notre Dame come into Oklahoma, talk about an awesome aesthetics for college football, I think that'd be a pretty bad matchup for Oklahoma. If you want a maybe better matchup, maybe it's another shot at Ole Miss without Kiffin. Mm-hmm. Maybe you get a little bit higher in the projections. It'd be tough, but maybe you get a shot to play like that G5 champ, maybe Virginia or Duke. I think that's kind of a long shot at this point. So I think you're probably looking at, does BYU upset Texas Tech? They would be probably in that range, or probably Notre Dame. That's probably your most likely opponents right now.
Well, how about this, Stephen? Cherokee Chooch. We want Notre Dame. Our offense is on the cusp of coming together at just the right time. And I don't know what kind of wacky tobacco they got out there in old Oklahoma, but give me some of that Crimson Kool-Aid if we think the offense is coming together based on what I've seen on the field.
Is that Jimbo's? Inches away.
Yeah, Hugh Freeze,
Yeah. I will buy his comment that they got a chance to get better, though. I think the next couple of weeks, you see this, like all coming off an off week, there's like different schematically things you can do and kind of reset. I think they can do that. I just don't know that the upside is, they're on the cusp of a breakout here. I think they kind of are what they are right now.
Hey, apparently it's legal out there. This all makes sense. Again, I'm not saying you can't do it, but learn something new every day. I was wondering what all those funky stores were when I went to Norman. I mean, they're literally all over the Norman. They're near campus. It's like I don't know. It was mind-boggling, but we can save that conversation for a different day. You know what else was mind-boggling, Stephen? What happened to Georgia's offense? Oh, they looked awful against Georgia Tech here, 16-9. Any concerns here? We're about to talk to SEC championship, but any concerns for them dogs after seeing the struggle bus here against Tech?
Mike, it was a little odd to see their offense struggle like that because Georgia Tech had just been giving up so many yards and points. You saw what they did against Pitt, BC, NC State down the stretch, and only Georgia can muster 9 points and 260 yards. I was very surprised. And also I was surprised at how Gunnar Stockton played in this game. It was pretty much anything that was downfield was just not working on Friday. So I kind of chalk this one up as it's a rivalry game. Weird things happen. Georgia Tech being the underdog, being doubted. Maybe they punched above their weight a little bit. I'm not too concerned yet because we saw Georgia play X amount of games before that looked a little bit better, but it was a little alarming, I think. And maybe the right answer to this is how much is the offensive line being banged up a real problem on Friday, and also what could be a problem on next Saturday in the SEC championship game.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you where it was a real problem, Stephen. The whole thing was in Louisville.
Oh my gosh.
41-0. And again, we led with, Will Stein, next coach at Kentucky. It looks like not officially official, but is being reported locally. It's done deal over here. So, brighter days are ahead, but, man, a lasting image of Mark Stoops here, sadly walking off the field. This was rough.
Mike, rough doesn't even begin to describe it. I would actually use the term embarrassing, because for Louisville to be that shorthanded, quarterback had been banged up. They were down to, was it walk-ons at running back, and they were missing their best receiver, and they still put up 440 yards and 141-0. That's embarrassing. That is probably a reason why Mark Stoops got fired. So, Mike, I'm out of words to describe how pathetic that performance was on Kentucky for Saturday. As bad as that was, the Will Stein hire is on the other total end of the spectrum, and a great move for Kentucky. So that's the positive.
Okay. Well, hey, another positive here for Missouri, Stephen, and poor Arkansas. They lost again to Mizzou, 31-17. And man, I think the most interesting or absurd stat, whatever you want to say, Stephen, of the weekend, Missouri passed for 25 yards and won by 2 touchdowns. Now, it helps, obviously, when you rush for over 300 yards like they did. But, man, Missouri just owns Arkansas, and I don't even know if their fans know this game happened. There was about 1,000 people in the stands here.
Yeah, it was pretty empty on television for this game. And, you hated just to see how that game went for Arkansas, just because, trying to get their first SEC win. They had been so close in SEC games. I thought this game would go down to the wire. I wonder what Petrino was doing by not starting Taylon Green too. Kind of felt like he deserved a little better in his last game there at Arkansas. But Mike, we went into this game on the preview show talking about line of scrimmage, and that is exactly where Missouri won this game. Over 300 rushing yards, the 4 sacks, 8 tackles for loss on defense. They just won this game in the trenches. And so I have to admit, while I was watching this game, I had the stat tracker up, and I was like, wait a minute, that can't be right. It was 25 passing yards, but yeah, you don't need to pass it when you run it as well as they were.
Nope. But who could have used some running, Stephen, is these Gamecocks. Damn it, Stephen. We put our faith in South Carolina to get a win here. Well, we just don't have it in us to pick Clemson to win a game. Yet that's exactly what they did, 28-14. And, I mean, I guess no one truly cares if you're a Gamecock, because a loss is a loss. But this was much closer than the final score indicated. They had the ball. They were going to potentially do a game-winning drive, and what happened? Pick 6, of course. That hits the receiver right in the damn hands. But that kind of sums up South Carolina's season. And even in the games where they clean a little bit up, they're still making these horrendous mistakes. Finish 4-8, and this is just a forgotten year.
Yeah, kind of a fitting end to a very disappointing season. Mike, I know you really wanted South Carolina to win this game. I don't know if it makes you feel any better, Mike, but wasn't there somebody on your show last week that said Nick Harper was going to catch a long touchdown because Clemson couldn't defend the pass?
Yep, I was thinking of you when that happened.
So at least something went right for South Carolina. But I think this game kind of encapsulated a lot of issues, which is they can't run the ball. iffy on third downs. The big plays in the passing game were great, but there just wasn't enough offensive consistency. And Clemson won this game in the trenches with the 5 sacks and enough on the ground. So it was probably much closer than 28-14 in reality, but just too many mistakes, too one-dimensional, and just like I said, kind of a fitting into a disappointing year for South Carolina.
And hey, if we can't make fun of Clemson, at least we can make fun of Florida State, Stephen. How Bama lost to them, we'll never know. And probably a bigger mystery, Stephen, is what in the world is Florida State doing bringing Mike Norvell back after getting pants by Florida in interim coach and all, 40-21. I guess old Florida State just doesn't have the money to buy out old Norvell here. But, man, what a horrendous way to end the season. I thought Florida stopped caring, but they got up one more time. Credit to them. DJ Lagway with 3 touchdowns. Jaden Ball run the ball. Stephen, 266 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. Florida State wanted no part of Jaden Ball, and it showed, didn't it?
It really did, Mike. I mean, I know we said embarrassing with Kentucky, but this Florida State performance was just as embarrassing. I know you're more focused on Florida, Mike, but you have a chance to go to a bowl game and you got steamrolled by a team that didn't look like they cared the previous week. Florida State is a mess, Mike. The good news is they got like 6 years to get their act together before they join the SEC. So you can rest assured by then they'll have some extra funding to take care of Mike Norvell. But credit to Jaden Baugh and Florida, Mike. I mean, they absolutely steamrolled this Florida State defense. And in a game where rivalry, motivation, we didn't know what to expect out of Florida, considering what happened against Tennessee, and also with Florida State having bowl hopes, Florida responded in a situation where I had a lot of doubt they would. They showed up, and certainly Jaden Baugh with one of the more memorable performances of the year.
Yeah, and shout out to Gator Matt. Great point here. Baugh should be priority number 1 for Jon Sumrall.
Didn't he talk about him in his press conference today, I think?
I know he mentioned the players there. I can't recall if he mentioned them specifically, but yeah, I would say safe to say he's already pursuing that. You know what?
I thought he was saying something about how he was watching the game before Tulane kicked off and wanted Jaden Baugh to get even more touches. So I take that as a very good sign for Jaden Baugh and Jon Sumrall to mesh. And maybe the second player on that list has got to be DJ Lagway. You get him to get an off season to get healthy, bounce back. You got your quarterback. You start with your star running back. That's a pretty good place to be, right?
I think so. And I think Jon Sumrall, he also cracked that, he's now he's at Florida. He doesn't have to worry about his players getting poached. So, I mean, it could be a significant bonus for him as he leads the Florida Gators. But, all right, Stephen, let's get into your updated playoff and bowl projections. Man, the bowls are shrinking here in the SEC. But once again, Stephen's got Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma as the projected teams out of the Southeastern Conference to make the college football playoff. Why do you hate Vanderbilt and Texas?
Man, Mike, the better question is why the committee hates them. I just don't see a path. Now, on Friday, early in the day, Utah was losing, and I thought, here's the path. Utah could lose. Maybe Miami gets upset. Maybe we see some other stuff happen, and maybe there's the path for Vanderbilt and Texas to sneak in. It's just not there. Unless the committee shakes up things on tomorrow night's ranking show, I just don't think there's going to be enough there. I think what's becoming pretty clear at this point is, barring a massive blowout loss, Alabama should be in. And also, unless the one kind of catch to that is what happens if BYU beats Texas Tech and then both Big 12 teams are getting in, who gets bumped out? And so given that Oklahoma has that head-to-head win over Alabama, Oklahoma is sitting pretty. It's Alabama, the team. And this, of course, is if they would lose to Georgia, maybe you have a little bit of reason to worry. So that's something to watch on Saturday. I hope, Mike, does that make sense?
No, it does, but I think he just kind of crystallized, this whole thing of, I mean, you kind of already hit on this, but why they want to expand the playoff. And it's going to be, I mean, this will be, you were making the case with Texas, but, Vanderbilt the same, where the SEC and the Big Ten, they're going to just annually going to complain probably that the team, SEC may get 5 in. They're like, why didn't we get 6? Why didn't we get 7? So that's, and it's because the Big Ten's got 18 now and SEC's got 16. I mean, it's in a weird way, it's their own fault, right? Now I'm glad Texas and Oklahoma are here, right? But if they were in the Big 12, whatever it was, they would dominate that league, and they're like guaranteed to get in.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're all consolidating power. Yeah, I mean, I think this just kind of just crystallizes it, right? Because all the Texas people think they should be in, and they've got points to get in. And Vanderbilt, I don't even think you should have the damn playoff if Vanderbilt doesn't get in at 10-2. Though they may never go 10-2 in the history of their program,
right?
And they may have the Heisman Trophy winner, and we're not going to put them in the playoff. Like that to me is asinine.
The hard part about this year, Mike, is when you look at the playoff bubble, it's a little bit more stacked this year compared to last season, and each year is going to be different. Last year it was, the Ole Miss team, it was Alabama at 9-3. This year we're talking about 10-win teams. It's just the math every year is going to be a little bit different, but that is getting at kind of the next step is the easiest way to solve some of these problems and make everybody happy is to expand the playoff to 16, and you get Texas, you get Vanderbilt. If you're the Big Ten, you'd get USC in probably this season. So that's where I think this is headed. Let me also throw one scenario at you, Mike, because I know you will like this, and I know some of the cousins will probably appreciate this. What if Alabama wins and then BYU upsets Texas Tech? There's a certain team from South Bend that might get left out in that scenario. So
ooh,
there you go. If you want to, if you don't like Notre Dame, that's probably the scenario for you. But I do think given what happened with Alabama making the SEC championship game, I think the SEC should feel pretty good about getting all 5 of those teams in it. And the question becomes like seeding. I think that the SEC champion will get a bye week. And then the question is does A&M fall behind Oregon? Either way, A&M's in a good spot to get a home game, and so is Ole Miss at this point.
Now, you said something important, though, Stephen. You said if Bama doesn't get blown out in the SEC championship game. So we're about to talk SEC championship. But what if, and again, not saying that's your prediction, but what if Alabama does get blown out? Could they be eliminated? Or heck, even Georgia. But either one. If either one of these teams gets blown out, could they be kicked out of the playoff, you think?
Alabama worries me a little bit. And let me kind of frame why that is. Because if you do a straight projection of the playoff, the 12 seed is going to be the G5 champion. I'm penciling in the ACC champion if it's Virginia at 11. If it's Duke, they might be 12 and the G5 team might be 11. Or it could be 2 G5 teams. So those are the last 2 teams, 11 and 12. So 10 is your last at-large spot. This week, Alabama is my 10th seed this week. So if they lose bad, and let's just say BYU loses, the convenient thing for the committee to do would be to put Miami in, and it solves the Notre Dame Miami debate that they've been having since the first set of rankings. So I could see that if they lose one-sided. Is that what I would do? No, it's not. I think if you're playing in a conference championship game and you're not the ACC where it's 7-5 Duke and Virginia, if you're playing in the SEC championship game and you're already a top 10 team, in a team that you already beat one time, I don't think you can kick them out of the playoff. I don't see why that would be fair to that team. They're playing an extra game against a top 5 opponent. So that's why I worry for Alabama is a one-sided game. Maybe the committee looks at Miami and says, look, they lost bad. This solves the problem. The other scenario is if BYU beats Texas Tech, BYU is in and Texas Tech is not dropping below Alabama, I don't think, which shuffles them out. But that also brings in the other scenario is You could leave out Notre Dame in that scenario. You keep Alabama in, BYU joins the field, and Notre Dame is left out. So I have a little bit of anxiety for Alabama fans and just saying I would hope this game doesn't get away from them. I don't think it will, but there are some scenarios out there where they could get left out.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it, but it's out there.
All right, let me flip it this way. So it's not just Alabama hate here, but let's say they win the SEC championship game. How high do you think they conceivably could rank? Could they get a first round bye? Could they get a home game? What do you think is on the table perhaps for Alabama?
Mike, I think they would be the number 3 seed potentially, maybe even number 4. I think if you beat Georgia 2 times and Georgia's your number 3 team, you're automatically going to jump back up into the first round bye. So I think Alabama wins. They're the 3, they're the 4. Georgia wins. They're probably going to end up being number 2 or number 3 when the rankings come out.
Right. Because one of Ohio State, Indiana has to lose, right? Because isn't that who they're playing?
Right. So that is an interesting debate here too, is what happens in that Big Ten championship game, because it feels like the winner is going to be the number 1 seed on Sunday. Does the loser drop to 2 or do they drop to 3? That could mean something because it feels like Ohio State's the number 1 team. And if you're Georgia, you probably 2 or 3 really doesn't matter because you could avoid them to the very end. But if you're the 4 seed, you're going to run into them a little bit earlier. Like I would rather let some of these other teams take their shot at Ohio State and maybe they get picked off somewhere. Whereas if you're Georgia, you're sitting here saying, if we can get to 2 or 3, we don't have to play Ohio State to the very end of the season. So I think that 2-3 line is a good place to be if you're hoping for an SEC champion this year.
Well, I set you up, Stephen. You didn't take the bait. You're a good man. Unlike Hunter Yurachek. When I asked you how high Bama could go, you were supposed to go, chick heavy, what an idiot. All right, but how about the SEC championship? We haven't really dove in. We've dove into scenarios here, but we got Alabama. They're the top seed. Believe it or not, I know Georgia's got the better overall record, but of course, Alabama beat Georgia. So they get the top seed. Georgia is the number 2 seed, if you will, heading into this epic matchup. And thoughts on Georgia and Alabama meeting yet again in Atlanta.
Mike, I know it's old and it might be a little bit boring for some, but man, I'm fired up for this game. And for 2 reasons that aren't necessarily on-field things, I think are kind of like X factors. You've got the injuries, Jam Miller. We saw Josh Cuevas didn't play last week. It doesn't sound like he's going to be good to go. Georgia's offensive line is banged up. How does that impact this game? But also I think the series, just the fact that Kirby is 1-7 against Alabama and they've lost the first game this season. And also for Kalen DeBoer, what a big moment it would be to win this game after you won the Iron Bowl in dramatic fashion. If you win this game, it's been an up and down season at times, but you start to answer maybe with some doubters if you could take care of business and beat Georgia, and all of a sudden you go into the playoff with a little bit of momentum. So there's a lot of on-field stuff, but history, the rivalry between these two, there's a lot I think that's fascinating about this matchup.
And I believe Georgia favored Stephen by 2.5 points. Does it feel at all like last year where we had Georgia, Texas? We had it twice. I believe Texas was favored in both. Now this year, Georgia favored in both. Any similarities there?
That's a good question. I actually would agree with Georgia being favored, I guess, in this game. It's probably tough to draw too many similarities from last season to this year. I think the question, I guess maybe the question is is Alabama in Georgia's head? Maybe that's the question, much like Georgia seems to be in Texas' head. Is that fair?
Oh, yeah, I think without a doubt.
So I think that's kind of, from a matchup perspective, I think there's a lot that makes me go, okay, Georgia did this, this, and this in the first matchup, and I think they can still do this. And it's going to be a close game, probably, given the way some of the Alabama games have played out this year. So if you're Georgia, can you find a way to get over that hump? and get a big victory. And like we talked about for the playoff stakes here, if you're Georgia, being the 2 or 3 seed, I think gives you a pretty favorable path to the semis and maybe a national championship game. Whereas if you lose, got to find out where that seeding, you're probably going to be hosting a playoff game, but it might be Ole Miss in the first round, potentially. It could be Oklahoma. Like there's a lot of variables that could shake up that order coming up. But I think the psychological battle is just fascinating because of the history between these two.
And who do you think has the coaching edge in this matchup? Kirby? I think it's undoubted. I can't speak right now. He's the best coach in college football, given what he's accomplished. But man, Alabama, they've got some really good coordinators, and both of them kind of up for head coaching jobs. And not to say Georgia doesn't, but Kalen DeBoer undefeated against Kirby last I checked. So, who do you think has the edge in the coaching department here?
Mike, I think big game DeBoering is going to show up on Saturday, don't you? But I still got to go with Kirby, I think. Don't you?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's why I asked you, because I'm kind of splitting hairs here. I think you do have to give the edge to Kirby, but for some reason I just keep coming back to Kalen DeBoer and his staff, where they just these big games they get up for him. So. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the bigger storylines entering the game.
Yeah, I do too. I guess from a matchup perspective, you can't really ask for anything better than DeBoer and Grubb going up against Smart and Glenn Schumann on that X's and O's battle. Mm-hmm. Seeing those two guys, knowing that we saw some high level stuff in their other meetings, and seeing what we could and potentially what we could see on Saturday. But it is very odd to me. And I know Kirby said after the first meeting that everybody else has had issues against Alabama. That is very true. But at the same time, Georgia's got, I mean, certainly this year, I think you could, without Nick Saban, I think most people would just assume that Georgia would have won the first matchup. And of course they fell short. Like everything seemed to be aligned to kind of end that streak the first time. And so how the psychological edge plays out, I think is a thing, but also I think when the game kicks off, like there's just a lot of individual matchups that kind of, you could talk yourself into Alabama, talk yourself into Georgia. Mike, either way, I think it is a clash of like heavyweights in the SEC. And I think hopefully we'll get a game like we saw last year where it was very close in the fourth quarter. Which
quarterback do you have more confidence in to win if it came to a final drive? Ty Simpson, who you noted already, he's looking a little shaky here lately, but still outstanding numbers, and he's still getting it done. Not saying he's a bad player at all, but maybe cooled off a little. And maybe you could say the same thing against Gunner. It was not a great performance against Georgia Tech, but I mean, this guy's clutch as hell. He can run, he can throw. Well, Ty Simpson can run as well, but Gunner. Both these quarterbacks have been highly efficient. What do you have more confidence in going into Saturday's matchup?
Mike, that's a great question. I would probably go Simpson, but not by much. And I think that kind of gets at the whole kind of theme of this game, is that whether it's the psychological edge, the coaching, the quarterbacks, it all feels really close, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. That's why, man, this is going to be a very difficult game to pick. You know what?
It is. And I know people are probably tired of seeing Alabama, Georgia, maybe wanted to see A&M, Ole Miss, want to see something new. But I know it's like what's old is new again. Seeing these two teams take the field on Saturday, once that game starts, I'm like I said, I'm fired up for it. I hope that we get a good game, and I think we will. And like I said, I mean, seeing DeBoer and Grubb go up against Smart, seeing to Stockton and Simpson, and see how they rebound and what could happen in the trenches here. I mean, there's a lot at stake and a lot of interesting kind of X's and O's battles that we'll see play out this week.
And which defense do you trust more going into this matchup?
I'd probably take Georgia. I like the way they've been playing the last couple of weeks. It does feel like they're getting a little bit more pressure. We saw what they did to Georgia Tech on Friday. They really shut down Haynes King. And also we saw a couple before that, the game against Texas. So I probably take Georgia, but not to sound like a broken record, it's probably not by much. Is that fair?
Perhaps, Stephen. Perhaps. I think I might give a slight lean to Alabama. I know Auburn had some success against them, but I don't know. Even I know they lost to Oklahoma, but that was a lot of special teams, blocks, pick six. I think I give the edge to Alabama on defense.
Here's some fuel to say that you're right. Alabama is second in the SEC in points allowed in SEC games. Georgia is third.
Mm-hmm.
So they're back-to-back. Also, Alabama, a little bit higher success rate on defense. And in terms of just pure yards per play, it's neck and neck too. I mean, you're talking both at like 4.8 or so this season in every game. So they are very close on the stat sheet.
But I would give a slight edge to special teams, I think, to old Kirby the Clapper. I mean, he's, the surprise on sides, the kicker's not yelling at people like Alabama. They got an elite punter. And not to say Bama's bad, but I would give it special teams edge to Georgia. What do you think?
Yes, I would give a special teams edge to Georgia in that game. Also, too, I do like Zachariah Branch on returns too.
Right.
So, yeah, I think Georgia gets an edge there. That's probably one of the easier edges to declare in this game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, so it's going to be a heavyweight fight, and you're right. Some people may be tired of seeing it, but man, there's almost always drama. I can't think of when's the last time there was a blowout in one of these games.
That's a good question. I mean,
I'll look it up right now. I'm on the matchup page. Well, we had 21, 33-18, but again, that wasn't a blowout.
That was the national championship, wasn't it? Where it was kind of like a late touchdown or something that kind of made the score a little bit.
Right. 21, 41-24, I guess, and then 20 COVID year, 41-24. I've wiped that game from my memory. So, again, most of these, I guess in fairness, 21, 41-24.
It was the
Alabama.
Bryce Young game, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, again, but aside from that, they're all relatively tight here.
The last 3 meetings decided by 7 points or less, including 2 of those that were decided by 1 score. So I think we're in for a heck of a game. I mean, if nothing else, how Georgia played against Georgia Tech, like I would like to see them rebound on Saturday, see a little bit more complete performance. It gives them some momentum going into the playoff. And then the same thing too with Alabama. If you win this game, you jump back into the top 4, you got an off week, you got a chance to kind of reset it a little bit. So I know that the stakes in the SEC championship game are probably lower than the 12-team era than the 4. But at the same time, if you think about seeding and home games and bye weeks and stuff and trying to get back on track, it does feel like that signifies we're going to be in for an epic game. It's going to be close, and there's just a ton at stake for these 2 teams.
Yeah, and Stephen, shout out Jeff Murray here. He says he gives Bama the ref edge. We got to put that in there too.
Kirby had some good calls this day.
Yeah, he'll get all those refs. They'll start making all the calls. You know what?
Right, the clapper. Or did he use up his one good bounce on the officiating this year, right?
Yeah. Anything else on the matchup, Stephen?
I think there was one thing, and I want to go back and try to watch the first game this week to get a better feel for what's going to happen on Saturday. But when I was thinking about that first matchup, I think it was 3rd downs that Alabama was 13 of 19 and Georgia was 2 for 8. But also how that game played out. Like, it was such a great first half for Alabama. Georgia came back. There was the 4th down stop late in that game. It feels, not to sound like a broken record, but it does feel like this is a game that's going to be decided on the margins. And we saw, like last time, Alabama won those margins. Clutch plays, winning 3rd downs. Like, who wins that? But also, what can we take from that first matchup that's going to tell us a lot about this one, too?
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that because I do recall that now. Kirby was like 13 to 19, 3rd down. I don't think I've been a part of a lot of games. Never won quite like that. That's kind of my standout memory from that one. You know what?
Yeah, that 13 of 19 is a really, really good day on third downs. I'm gonna bet that is a how I guess better question. How everywhere I would guess that's probably stapled in the Georgia facility this week, right? Or displayed or like talked about, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, real quick before we highlight Cousin Rick, the last thing, Stephen, that I got. So we got the SEC championship. We're gonna have to make a prediction at some point. I don't know if you're aware, Stephen, but the Cousins have caught up to you. Stephen and the Cousins are still in the lead, however, tied for the lead heading into the SEC championship. I don't know which cousin. We might do a special cousin JR. See, JR's biased. I was going to say JR, Stephen up. I was going to let them pick the SEC championship, but they're both too biased. We might need an unbiased one to pick the championship. But Stephen, it could very well come down to that. And then last week, me and Two Slick each had 7, so I caught a little ground on you, Stephen. And then Shane dead last. Shane's not catching us anytime soon.
Mike, I guess I'm mad at myself because I wanted to pick Texas and I chickened out on it. So
that could cost you the title.
Right. See, Arch Manning cost you the title. How frequent was the communication with Cousin Shane in the second half of that Tennessee Vanderbilt game? Did it start out strong and kind of decrease?
Yeah, he went. He ghosted me for the final 2 hours of that performance, and I was shocked that he came on here for an emergency podcast. But I made him do it.
Credit to him for showing up after a tough loss there. I'm sure maybe some Tennessee legends helped him.
That gave him the courage to show his face, just like I hope it gives Cousin Rick the courage to keep donating.
Texas A&M's biggest fan, Cousin Rick. Gig 'em, Aggies.
Thank you, Rick. Enjoyed the show tonight. Diego for Heisman. Vandy and Texas should be in before Notre Dame. I 1,000% agree. Going to enjoy the conference championships. Beat the hell out of next.
I think Cousin Rick would like my first round playoff projection, which has Texas A&M hosting Virginia. I would imagine they're going to be a double-digit favorite in that game. So I think Cousin Rick would like that one.
It can't get much sweeter than that. I mean, what would be a hypothetical? I told you I can't talk. Hypothetical spread, you think, between A&M and Virginia in College Station?
I would say it's got to be at least 14 points. I might even go higher than that.
Well, that's enough, Steve. That's more than enough going into a playoff game. But yeah, no, that'd be quite the delight.
I mean, even if it's Duke or Tulane, it's going to be probably closer to 17 points. So that is the good thing for Texas A&M is to get that home game, potentially an easy first round game. The question would be in the second round, if they are the 5 seed, they're probably going to be up against Texas Tech, old rivals getting back together. If they're the 6, they might be getting Georgia, Indiana. Like that'll be some interesting second round matchups, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't wait to see how it all breaks down, and we'll have that information in less than a week's time. So can't wait for that. Also can't wait any longer, Stephen, to shout out all the cousins that have donated to the show tonight. Junior gifted Haywood 97. Thank you, Junior, you the man. And of course, the legend.
Cousin JR has done it again.
He gifted a 320 Pilot. We appreciate you, JR. Then we got Jake Smith. He says it's a gold rush for Pete Golding down here. I love to see that.
Love it.
Looks like a little Ole Miss reef over here. I hope that's what that is.
Is that the Trinidad flag there?
Maybe. I was trying to. It's too small. I can't really see. But shout out Freedom Van. What a name. He gifted those band geeks. Shout out Freedom. We appreciate you. Shin the Master Sparky. He gifted 5 memberships. Stephen, Justin, Karen Massey, Michael Swinford, Ethan 28, and Asher Sachs. Thank you, Shin. And then the legend, Stephen Up. He gifted one. Let's see.
Always showing up for them boys in Tuscaloosa. It's Stephen Up. Roll Tide.
He gifted Billy Tippett. What a name. Thank you, Stephen Up. And then Spencer. He gifted Daryl Givens. Stephen, all these new cousins, welcome to
The family.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen, for dropping by and dropping all this knowledge on us knuckleheads. We always do appreciate all the insight. Before you go, can you remind the cousins how to follow you and how to find your work?
Absolutely. Come check out all my work at athlonsports.com. Got plenty of previewing projections for all the playoff. We'll have more coverage, of course, when the matchups are announced. So check us out over there at Athlon Steven on Twitter, Stephen L. CFB over on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah. Thank you, JP, for tonight's shout-outs. Cousin JR, Jr., Lance Miller, Freedom Van, Jay Addison, Shin, Jr., Brandon Rodarte, Stephen Up, Spencer, Ed, Cousin Rick. We appreciate each and every one of you, especially you, JP, for all the hard work. We'll catch you on the next one.
Hey, buddy, this beer's for you, Mike, and Cousin Shane. That SEC podcast loves the Pirate, and the Pirate loves that SEC podcast. Hail State.